But I don't want to go there. I want to get back to what Jesse was talking about, because I think the last 2 days, what Jesse talked about with it not being a perfectly fair competition illuminated a few things to me, right? The standard question that I've asked to both of you on every show we've ever done is, forget Brock Purdy. How did Sam Darnold get into this equation? What happened between anointing Trey Lance as the franchise QB last year, him getting hurt, and then him competing between Sam Darnold, right? We never got an answer for that. And I think what I've learned over the last couple of days, and what I want to get to with you guys, is it seems like the Niners had made a decision, and Cavalcante wrote it this way too, to be out on Trey Lance after 2022. I don't know what went on in the 2022 offseason, but whatever went on, I think it was somehow catastrophic. It freaked them. They hedged the crap out of it by bringing back Jimmy. I think that's very, very clear at this point. And it scared them to the point that they went and signed Sam Darnold, and they were pretty much willing to shop Trey Lance, right? Lynch denied that they were shopping him in February, but Lynch has already publicly admitted it, that they were shopping him during draft time. And draft time was, maybe 15 days after he was cleared. So we're not talking about a large window for them to have him back, and something has changed this particular offseason. And that's where, to me, if we look at this Trey Lance situation, I think the biggest issue in process is actually before the draft, and we can get into that, and I'm sure we will later in the show. But what do you think of that when I say that the biggest interpretation I get seeing how it played out this offseason is that it was a catastrophe in their mind on what happened in 2022. And I'll leave you with this last point, and I'll go to Krug first and then to Jesse. And the last thing that strengthens my point the most is they told us with a straight face they feel he has improved this offseason from last offseason. And this offseason, he's their third quarterback in a weaker quarterback room than when he was the starter last year in a stronger quarterback room, right? Same two people between Purdy and Lance, and Jimmy G versus Sam Darnold. I think everybody takes Jimmy G. So what do you guys think of that theory? Do you think that there's credence to my idea that this fell apart with Trey Lance in 2022 and Brock Purdy kind of allowed them to have a clean break from this situation? What do you think, Kruger?
Well, it's hard to know when they they obviously at some point made the evaluation they liked him, and obviously at some point they made the evaluation that they had to bring Jimmy back, and there was not a lot of football played by Trey Lance in between there. So something that Trey did along the way there made them change their tune. I think they're saying that he's improved from last year because we're all smart enough to see that it's perfectly clear. But this goes right back. I don't want. This is not about me, but I told you guys in February that it sounded to me like they had decided that Brock was their guy. They were going to recommit to Brock and move on. And then here comes Darnold, and then here comes Allen, and it's just all kind of reconfirmed that idea to me. So, as far as when did they decide they were? They obviously hedged when they brought back Garoppolo. In 22, right? So they were hedging then. And then the Darnold thing, I think a lot of people read it as they're hedging on Purdy's health. We had many live streams, Vish, you and I, where we openly debated that exact question. Is Sam Darnold a hedge against Brock Purdy's health or against Trey Lance's development?
We loved talking about that, didn't we?
Yeah, and it was a topic that was primary. And then, to me, they obviously said something to Sam Darnold to get him to sign here on day one of free agency, and they said something to Brandon Allen to get him to sign here. What I don't get is really more of the last 24 hours, where you give Sam Darnold the number 2 job. Trey Lance is not at practice, and then within 24 hours of that, when it looks like, man, they're gonna shop him. Shanahan's saying, I hope he's on the roster. Lynch is saying he's most likely going to be on the roster. It just seems like everything is based on, the market that we're unaware of. Lynch went on KMBR this morning and said if we can find a landing spot for Trey Lance, that's a really good one for him and works for our organization. That's not something we'd turn a blind eye to. I think that's an understatement. I think what he really meant to say is we're going to run towards that. But then he goes on to say, but that's not where our focus is right now. Our focus is on getting Trey back here and us being the best football team. So, personally, I don't want to see him traded unless they are a better Super Bowl contender. And that means they don't get a draft pick, but they actually get a player that helps them win the Super Bowl this year. Otherwise, even though he's an insurance policy at a position that I think they probably need an insurance policy at. And there's value in that. And that value is greater than what they're going to get in draft pick compensation in 2023 and, in next year's draft, 2024 draft. So I'm with the people saying, Peter King went on 95.7 The Game today and was like, hey, I hope they don't get rid of him. I hope they decide to keep him because I agree with him. I think it would be smart. And then there's a lot of different wrinkles to this, but Peter King says, I'm just telling you, do not trade this guy. I think it would be a big mistake. And that's what he said about the Niners and their decision to trade or not to trade Trey Lance. He said that today with Willard and Dibbs on 95.7.
So what are you going to do? Just keep him on ice? Like he's going to be forever the quarterback that we'll never find out if he can play or not?
Well, and then there's the other thing, and not to jump over Jesse here. I'm Jesse. I'm not going to dominate the conversation, but one of the things that to my naked eye, I would say that they were comparable in camp. Okay, very comparable. But the one stat that really is revealing, and I thought that Lance obviously looked better than Darnold looked better than Lance in that Raider preseason game in my eyes. But I also kind of felt like Lance looked better than Darnold in the Denver game the very next week. But I did see today in training camp, and I didn't keep this stat, and I have to trust that this stat is accurate. But people who did keep this stat said
that
that
red zone touchdown percentage that Lombardi posted?
Exactly. That Purdy's, and if you believe Dave, and, I'll say this. I know that Purdy and Darnold's red zone touchdown percentage was higher than Lance's. But if you believe Dave, I think he had it at Purdy at 37%, Darnold at 33%, and Lance at 16%. And I will say this, that really close in and in short windows is the weakness of Lance at this juncture. He's not quite as accurate and on time when the windows get smaller. So I believe that their numbers are better than his in the red zone. I don't know that it's that pronounced, but I believe that they did have better red zone numbers.
Jesse, go ahead.
The thing about red zone numbers is you have to figure out how to get there before they become relevant. And one thing that I do know is that when I was there, Sam Darnold-led offenses couldn't move the ball. And Trey Lance, every time he would get on the field in the move the ball periods, they would move the ball. That's what I saw for 5 straight days. Sam Darnold comes on the field, they go 3 and out, they get 1 first down, they stall out. There was a 3 and out period where they lost yards, and then you're seeing that play out in the preseason games and not all of it's been his fault. Latu had a fumble or whatever. He threw a perfect pass to Bell that was intercepted, but
he got stuffed on a quarterback sneak.
It took a lot for them to try to gas up Sam Darnold, and I felt like that's what they were trying to do. It's like, shoot, Sam hasn't moved the ball all game and didn't do it last game either. Let's bring him back for the third quarter. Well, he didn't do it again for the first drive. Let's keep him out there again. Okay, finally we scored. We can get him out of here. It's like, I just felt like they went completely out of their way to prop him up so that they could justify this decision that was really made 5 months ago. So to me, if it was even close, and listen, based off of what I saw in the short 5 days I was there, based off of what I've seen in the regular season games, kind of trying to put together reports from the days that I haven't been there, I would give the edge to Lance, and I would feel pretty confident in that. But even if Darnold had the slight edge, we're talking about splitting hairs at most right here. So why wouldn't the tie go to Trey Lance, the guy that you spent all that capital on, the one that you believed in 2 years ago, the one that Vish, I'm gonna take this. You probably had it saved up, but somebody on your Twitter made a great comment when Sam Darnold was available in free agency and went for way less than what the 49ers gave up to go get Trey Lance, they could have had Sam Darnold. They decided to give up more and go get Trey Lance. So there was something they saw there.
They were interested that same offseason too for Sam Darnold.
They
did
were.
their homework.
They were, and they could have gotten him for a hell of a lot less. So there was something there. What changed? You know, it's interesting because that question kept coming up, and Vish, you talked about it the most. What changed between last year when he was the starter? If you still love him and he's improving, I don't understand this. That question hits very different when now, in hindsight, we know that the reality was they've been trying to move him for over a year. That's
Right.
where they're at. So that's what's changed. Nothing literally has changed because they didn't like him then and they don't like him now. But for some reason, they want to hold him hostage. I don't understand it. If you don't want him here, you don't believe there's a future. You can say that we like him and we don't want to trade him and all these other things. Everything you've done has said the opposite of that. So then why do you continue to force him to be on this team? That doesn't make sense to me.
It's that tough situation where I think part of the reason why they keep, and I'm going to answer all of this right here. And so first, in regard to the why they keep saying they want to keep him, it's because I think they have a very strong understanding that trading him at this point is very difficult. And you know what? I think they also understand that part of the issues in the situation stems from not what's happened since he's gotten here, but the misevaluation to bring him here. Not understanding the timeline of your football team and understanding the timeline that Trey Lance needed. And I think that's where some of it is like, well, we'll keep you rostered at least, and you can be the third quarterback because we feel bad, you know, about the situation and the fact that it'll be difficult. Like, it's difficult right now for Trey Lance to go catch on with another team. His career is in a complete state of limbo. Like, his career is in purgatory right now. He needs something to pull him out. He needs a miracle chance right now because he's in a really, really tough spot with how finances have been allocated and where he is in his development. Now, in regard to the quarterback stat and the red zone stat, so here's my issue with that. I feel like each year in training camp, we do this statistical profile and it's like throwing shit against a wall, right? We decide to give a new stat, like different interpretation. Last year, David Lombardi was going on and on about the completion percentage in the move the ball period. That was his favorite stat. This year, he posted the same stat. Sam Darnold and Trey Lance were both 57%. Guess what? It probably meant nothing last year. It probably means nothing this year. So he finds whatever stat he's calculated that has a different profile between the two, and he's like, see, that's the one that shows why one is playing and one isn't. I don't think that's the case. Personally, I think the biggest thing, and I think the reason why Trey Lance always had the work cut out for him in this competition is that the experience was always going to be a factor when you're picking the backup quarterback, right? Once Purdy came back and was healthy, as Krug has said the entire offseason, this team established they were fully committed to Purdy. Now it's about building the correct quarterback room around Purdy, and those variables change very much because that's not just about what's on the football field. That's about who's experienced if Purdy's out for a couple plays. Who do we feel can run our offense in that kind of a situation? And that's where you go with even though Sam Darnold doesn't reach the highs, even in preseason, that Trey Lance has reached, I think there's more consistency to Sam Darnold's level of execution of the offense, whereas Trey Lance, the peaks are way higher, but there were also valleys that I'm sure would scare Shanahan. And I think that's where the situation kind of got. I think the biggest thing is, Krug, you were right about one thing. So you and I were both kind of right. Because if you remember, our conversation about trading him was that I said it made sense for him to be traded. You said they would trade him. I said they wouldn't trade him till around here. And I guess we were all kind of right in some capacity. But either way, for Trey Lance's career, the best case scenario was to somehow see the writing on the wall and somehow get yourself to another organization in May or March. Because I think outside of Brock Purdy melting in training camp, as Shanahan said, outside of Brock Purdy not being fully healthy, which was a possibility, and outside of Sam Darnold just being an absolute biscuit, I think his work was cut out where it was a situation where the Niners were pretty much coming into this season understanding that was going to be their 1 and 2.